I was going to say that this started as a side project, and it's something I was commenting with Antonio before, that I work in different topics regarding European integration, which is the axis of my research, but I was finding more and more sources on these issues of sustainability and development, with the setting of a European Union agenda from a historical perspective. So I thought that these sources were talking to me and inviting me to dig and to find deeper connections about that. So I was just following the thread of the sources and in going to accounts and trying to investigate this question of the relationship between development and sustainability in European integration. I found some messages that kept on repeating, and mainly this idea that there are two elusive keys in search of each other. So I was trying to find the origins and development of this connection. And they brought me, the sources made some mention ideas that are very similar to these two quotations I brought here today, Victor Hugo, who says like, are you afraid of the good you might do? There's something I find again and again when working on this topic. And also Camille in L'Homme Révolté, this idea that humans, we are not totally guilty because we live in a stark history, but we are not totally innocent because we continue it. So there's always this paradox in there. And talking about objectives and sources, my main objective is to try to find all these connections between development and sustainability as part of a historical evolution guiding the European community, the European Union policy making. This idea of self-defining dimensions of development, cooperation, and sustainability, especially as part of a discursive apparatus. So I'm studying the narrative, the propaganda, the self-image regarding this relationship between sustainability and development. So first of all, I will just show you the phases of the documents I found with different sources. In the first phase, this post-Second World War decolonization context, what I found was this idea of, yes, we have past imbalances and we have asymmetries. So there was a way of trying to move forward from that, from these incipient European integration institutions. And at the same time, there's also this fact that there was a neglect of the global dimension of European integration that appeared when dealing with these development and sustainability questions. And it had to do with that, with the fact that they were not just member states with socioeconomic cohesion responsibilities as part of the European integration process, but there were, of course, all these international cooperation and sustainability responsibilities. And these responsibilities were tied to the fact that the European community was becoming a player at the global level. So that had different implications. Then I will talk about this phase, the second phase of the end of the post-Cold War period. And of course, at this time, there are many shifting paradigms. And there's also a diversity of instrumental meanings that are given to the idea of sustainable development in the policymaking in this period. And these include mainly how the European community, then European Union agenda setting focuses on the notion of the search for a compatibility between environmental protection and economic growth. This appears again and again. That's a very important dilemma. And also, very importantly, the democracy clause, that you know that human rights are required to receive development aid is given by the European Union. So that's the core of the democracy clause and the conditionality implications of this. Later on, we have this notion of ecological modernization, trying to bring development and sustainability as a paradigm shift. And finally, there's a move towards the idea of a sustainability governance, as a self-assumed principle for the European Union. So as you say, the European Union in this context appears as a very virtuous actor, and of course there are backlashes and oppositions and critiques, but we will get to that later. And more current challenges, and not only there are challenges here, there's also the difficulty and the challenge of the innovation capacity of a global and new civil society. All this issue about the activists, movements, and mainstreaming of concepts with a determinant social impact. This idea of positive societal impact by means of sustainable development. So this is more and more reaching the imagination of agenda-setting actors in European representative politics. So this will be the last part of my presentation. And first of all, I just wanted to fly over the decolonization context after the Second World War and this semantic way and the neglected complexity of all this post-colonial legacy, as we know, this whole idea of recycling empire, the invention of a European development aid administration, which is very much linked to this new paternalism and institutionalized corruption that Down studies in the when she analyzes this DG8, the Regional Aid for Development Aid in this period. And also in the archives, there are many interesting discussions about the camouflage colonialism. So I thought that was very interesting. And then there's a paradox, and this paradox has to do with this European community foundational symmetry. There's really the inception of all these processes between donors and receivers after the end of the Second World War, and how it was internationalized by these incipient common European policies in this realm. So there was a division that was consolidated, and instead of a concept of this ongoing dialogue in the European Community Development Cooperation, we find these cleavages, especially since the beginning. So I thought it was important to highlight that. And also another turning point I think is important to mention is the Asia Pacific, the ACP Accord in Sub-Saharan Africa, how this marks an inception of the European integration process, also as a process to organize the aftermath of decolonization movements, how they wanted to take up the responsibility, how it was very difficult to channel, and how they attempted to do that. So they talk about colonial downfall, the triggering of inter-European cooperation mechanisms to deal with the aftermath of all these movements, and how they try to link that to the idea of prosperity and social welfare as an objective in the horizon. But at the same time, we see the contrast is the incapacity of the community representatives charged with this task to elaborate a commonly shared defining memory of this acquis, of this heritage as part of the integration, something we know, something we talk very little about. And we again find these imbalances, reality versus implementation, which is very typical of European politics. And with the Treaty of Rome in 1957, we find this idea of promoting social and economic development in these former colonies as a way of maintaining close relations between them and these powers. So there is this mismatch between an egalitarian management, a hope between donors and beneficiaries because of this idea of a third world that should be linked to cooperation, but is full of asymmetries. So just moving forward, I would like to talk also about this idea of development trade nexus as an articulation of post-colonial relations. But I think that especially in the work, we find this emergence of a sustainability discourse, and also something I was talking before about the transnational and international character during lunch, this idea that there's a pressure to respond to cross-border pollution, for instance, increasingly at the global scale through environmental changes, but at the same time to try to preserve the implications of, trade implications for environmental policy. Of course, we have, as Antonio pointed, the Brundtland report, and this whole notion that meeting the needs of the present should be done without compromising the ability of future generations. So that becomes a really prominent thought. And this is also linked to this conditionality clause, to democratic clause, to the conditionality implications. And of course, there are different pleasures at different levels, talking about the competitiveness and priorities, and also the preeminence of the old style economic expansion at all costs, making it impossible to have this so-called ecological modernization and sustainability, governance and sustainable development in the end. So I think there's something very important, which is the fact that more and more the European Union since the end of the Cold War becomes a global actor, and the issue of environmental sustainability acquires important geopolitical meaning as well, linked to the energy sector, certainly nowadays. And just as to have a conclusion on open questions, I would like to talk about how is it better, I mean, as part of this debate, something that comes again and again in the documents, how to challenge societal mainstreaming of the conceptual evolution of EU development and sustainability agendas, to have this positive societal impact, how there are new developments where all inertias we never get to this so-called ever postponed future. And in this new range also of social and economic inequality priorities that are mentioned in the document are not incorporated into this idea of searching for a balance between development and sustainability. So just to end, I would like to mention these ideas that there's a search currently for alternative paths to grow as part of this ecological modernization paradigm, self-defined paradigm for the European Union. And the critiques, for instance, Logan here talks about how the poor, all the fragile populations around the world should be part of our will, instead of being a perpetual they, this us versus them dichotomy. How we still have this paradox of multi-level quality degradation. We have a degradation of the quality of the environment, political relations, democracy, the quality of democracy, the quality of socioeconomic relations and policies, and this spreads without having also nearly no benefit to the a priori graders. So just to finish, I would like to say that there's a fundamental tension that persists in there, which is this idea that the short term of economic priorities is opposed to the necessary long term for the consolidation of sustainable development within a global community of values mindset. And I would like to stress that the idea of a community of values, and just to finish, I wanted to read this to you, that in all these kind of issues, in all these political discussions, whenever we limit our choices to what seems possible or reasonable, we disconnect ourselves from what we truly want, and all that is left is conflict.